There is an organization called Yoga Alliance. It's kind of the governing body for yoga. So they're the ones that set the standard when it comes to certifications. Basically, the bare minimum certification that you need to be recognized as a yoga teacher is a 200-hour training. So you go through 200 hours of training that should have a variety of different styles. So, depending on the school you go to, a lot of different schools will have a focus on a different style of yoga. My training was an Ashtanga Vinyasa, which I know that those words don't mean anything to you or anyone who's listening, but it's a moving meditation. It's a very traditional practice. It's a strong practice. But then we also were trained in other more gentle practices like deep stretching, which is called yin yoga, breathing exercises, meditations. So it should be a really well-rounded course or training that you go through, and the trainings are everywhere. You could throw a rock and hit a teacher training somewhere. My personal teacher training was done in Scottsdale, Arizona, from a studio called Modern Yoga. The teacher is John Salisbury, and he's really world-renowned. He's been practicing and teaching yoga for over 25 years. His stepdad was a really well-renowned yoga teacher as well. So he's kind of second generation. But the bare minimum is 200 hours. So I did that. And then afterwards, there's an extended certification that you can do to receive your 500-hour training. So you do your first 200, then you would do a second training that's 300 hours. So I did both of those to gain my 500-hour certification. And then Yoga Alliance has standards on what you can do from there. And so there's an experienced designation. And for the 500-hour, I believe it's over 1,000 hours of teaching and over 4 years of actually teaching that you can receive an experienced designation. And so that is what I currently carry as an ERYT 500 certification, which means that I've been teaching for over 4 years. I have over 1,000 hours of teaching, and I've done over 500 hours of training.
Okay. And you've been practicing yoga since what year?
2010.
Okay. So that's a wealth of experience, and I'm going to keep doing this correlation. So I'm sorry.
I don't want to say that year. That actually kind of like made me cringe a little bit. I'm like, that's been so long. Was that 13 years? That's crazy. But I'm aging myself.
that sells your level of expertise though. So
sure.
I'm going to make this correlation a lot probably in this episode, but it goes along the lines with jiu-jitsu. And you go to the class, you start learning, and it's very intimidating, especially for us alpha types, because you go in and you realize you're a fish out of water. And it doesn't matter if you're the biggest fish on the block, you can lose to a little fish that knows what they're doing. And I found, even in I've done jiu-jitsu since 2006. I found that even when you hit that blue belt level, that first year, maybe some people it takes 2 years, just depends on how much you go. But you think you really got a grasp on things. You're like, I know this shit. Like I'm getting this down. Every new move that's shown now, I see it and I'm like, all right, cool, I can get this. But when it comes to teaching, I find that you revisit your path all over again. And when you start teaching stuff, you're like, holy shit, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu. So is yoga the same? Were you like, oh my God, I know these poses, I got these stretches down, and then you start to teach and you're like, holy cow, there's a whole other level to this.
100%. 100%. I think that's really fun that you brought that up. I remember my training like it was yesterday, and I remember sitting there and I was actually really overwhelmed, and it was a really humbling experience because I was like, I thought that I knew all of these things, and I realized that I don't know anything at all. And then when I did go to actually teach, it's amazing because I don't think a lot of people understand how intricate it is. And, I remember my very, very first practice teaching session, and I was like, and I'm looking at my hand and I'm like, what is this called? Like, what is that, and it's your hand, but to articulate, put your hand here or put your foot there, and to do it in a way that is easy to understand and students can follow and direct is a whole skill set within itself. And obviously, like I said before, I came from a background of teaching, so I was a skydiver, and so I taught skydiving, and I thought that I knew how to teach, but yoga was a completely different world. And it was definitely a learning curve, and it was very humbling. And even year one of teaching, like you said, like I thought year one, I was like, I've got this, like I'm a great teacher. And I look back at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I still didn't know anything. And, I think that's the beauty of it though, is that if you care a lot about what you're doing, then you're constantly learning and growing and trying to be better. And you're never coming into the situation thinking that you know everything, because you don't.